The following podcast contains language and content which some listeners may find offensive. Discretion is advised. You are now locked in to Daddyless Daughters, the podcast. My name is Karina Mills. And my name is Aliyah Ali. And together, we will be uncovering the layers of childhood trauma, relationships, sex, and men.
My dad picked me up from a birthday party. I was probably like 3 or 4, and I'd been ill before going, and I was sick in his car, and he took me out of the car on Deptford High Street and fly kicked me.
What are you doing in terms of your own personal development and working on yourself so you are not attracted to the things that we are wired as daddyless daughters to be attracted to? Today's episode, we'll be speaking with a brave and phenomenal woman I met a few months ago. We immediately connected through a passion of ours as we both work with young people. She founded a youth initiative called Endure, where she holds workshops with young people on a universal scale to derail them from leading a life of crime. Liv, welcome to Daddyless Daughters podcast. How are you today?
Good, thank you.
Karina?
Yes, I'm here. I'm in the building.
Well, let's dive straight into it. Our first question for you today is, what's your earliest memory of your dad?
Probably an occasion where my dad picked me up from a birthday party. I was probably like 3 or 4, and I'd been ill before going, and I was sick in his car, and he took me out of the car on Deptford High Street and fly kicked me for being sick. Yeah, he was so angry at me that I'd even dared to throw up in his car and not been able to make it to somewhere to be sick.
Wow.
And then he had like plans for the rest of the day. So to punish me, he made me, instead of like changing me out of my clothes and putting me into something else in any bath, he made me strip in the street and put a bin bag on me, like made a hole for my head, made a hole for my arms, and made me spend the day in a bin bag.
So was he often violent towards you?
Yeah. That was one of his like go-to methods of abuse, but like obviously not the only abuse that he used.
Wow, and that all started from the age of 3-4 years old?
Yeah, maybe even before then, but that's like the earliest I can remember.
And so growing up, how did that affect the relationship that you had with him, or did the abuse get worse?
It got worse, significantly worse. So my mum and dad split up when I was about 3, so we would spend like a few days a week staying with my dad. So we'd stay with him always on a Saturday overnight, and he'd drop us back on Sunday or Monday morning, and that's when he chose to abuse us. So me and my brother, I've got an older brother. He was like physically violent to my brother, which I witnessed a lot of. But all of my abuse that I went through was very much hidden from my brother.
Can you tell us a bit more about that abuse?
So as much as we stayed at my dad's house, and I say that in like air commas, when he'd take us for the weekend, we'd get to his house, and where he lived, there was like, at the end of his road, there was like an alleyway that me and my brother used to refer to as like Death Alley, because there was always blood up the walls, smashed bottles, drunk people in the alleyway. And on the other side, there was a park, and as we got to the front door, he'd let himself into the block, and he'd tell us to go to the park and say that he'd pick us up, and he wouldn't pick us up, so we'd sleep in the park.
What?
No way.
Yeah, so we'd sleep in the park, and me and my brother would take it in turns to like take shifts to be awake. So there was like a skate ramp that you could sit under. I'd sleep, and then he'd wake me up, and then he'd sleep, and I'd wake him up. He'd come and get us in the morning. He'd take us home sometimes, and then he'd usually like physically abuse my brother, beat my brother up, and then he'd take me into the bathroom and he'd rape me or sexually assault me.
And what age did he start raping you at?
Around the time that the assault happened, when I was sick in the car, so I'd say like from about 3.
What age did the abuse stop?
I stopped seeing my dad altogether when I was probably just about to turn 7.
Right. And so as a child, was you showing any signs of like sexual abuse?
So I didn't disclose my abuse till I was about 12. And my mum, when my mum found out about it, when I disclosed, she said that now that she's put things together, she had seen signs. So I used to come home from my dad's, and I'd always complain that, like, we used to call them my bits and pieces, were sore, and I'd like lay on my bed with like my legs open because I was too sore to sit down or shut my leg. So she says now she sees that, but she kept taking me to the doctors, and the doctors were saying it was fine, it was normal, changed the bath, like changed like the shower gels we was using, changed the creams. But now she looks at it they were signs of that.
And the doctors never ever picked up on any of this when you went?
No, not to my knowledge. My dad's ego, my dad was definitely a narcissist, definitely an abuser, but his ego, him and my godfather, who's my mum's best friend, knew each other from school. And my dad made a comment to my brother, actually, like, oh, I used to beat up your godfather all the time. So my brother went back and said that to my godfather. My godfather said, right, cool, when your dad comes to pick you up next, I'll show you that ain't no pussy hole. And when our dad came to pick us up, they had an altercation one day. And after that, my dad never come to pick us up again. My brother was mute for a long time after that, so my brother didn't talk till he was about 11.
Wow.
And then he finally disclosed my dad had like physically abused him, and he disclosed that to like a TA in his school. So that went to social services and CAMS and all them people, but no one ever asked me at that point if I'd ever been abused or if anything had happened to me. No one picked up on anything.
Okay. Did you ever question if it was right, if it was wrong?
Not at that age. I didn't know any different.
So at what age did you realise, hold on, this is wrong?
Do you know what? I don't even think there was an age. I think it was like, I used to hang around on my estate quite a lot. The boys on my estate kept making this joke about, right, have you seen Jesus? Have you seen Jesus? Because my dad had like long dreads. So they used to make this joke about him. And one day he come out of his house and I see him. Like, I didn't know it was my dad up until that point. He come out of my house and I see him. It frightened me. I was with one of my female cousins and one of my really good friends at the time. My cousin said to me, why did you run off when you see him? Like, that's your dad. And I said, right, because he raped me. And I don't think it was until I actually said the words and the words come out that I even remembered that had happened. Wow. It was like a trigger. It put all of these memories back into my head. I don't think until that point it was a thing that I even thought about.
And in terms of your emotional regulation growing up, obviously it was interrupted by the abuse. Did you shut down emotionally? Could you identify with any emotions until that day when you saw him?
To be honest with you, so I can remember my abuse, but I can't remember my childhood, or like I can't remember between stopping seeing my dad and disclosing my abuse. I can't remember that period of time. It makes my mum really upset because she used to do a lot of things with us and I can't remember activities and stuff we used to do. And I guess that's part of my trauma, has cut that whole period out for me. Obviously my mum didn't know I was abused, so my mum went through court to try and get visits and stuff with my dad and make him come and see us. He never turned up and he never wanted to see us, but I think as a kid I just wanted to be a daddy's girl. I had my godfathers that were amazing men, but they had daughters, and their relationship that I witnessed with them, I didn't have that. So I think I crave that, but I can't remember who I was in that period of time. So once I disclosed, I became very angry, very aggressive, very closed off, but I don't know before that point.
I can relate to that anyway. I can't remember a lot of my childhood, and only now that I go through therapy and the more I get kind of triggered to relay certain parts from my childhood, that it starts to then come back. And I was saying to Karina, it's even funny how like our mind does these amazing things but also weird things at the same time, where in order to protect us it will literally just shut that whole life down.
Yeah, because I was saying to Aliyah before as well that that's something that happened to me. My mind just completely was like, I don't remember. And then when I reached like 26, 27, I saw a picture. It's like all came flooding back. You had to see your dad for everything to come flooding back. So you're not alone there.
I went through therapy after I disclosed, but I knew I'd been abused. I could remember the abuse, but I couldn't remember certain things, and I didn't want to talk about it. So with my counsellor, I used to tell her like episodes of EastEnders and make myself the character, and I did that for a year until she realised what I was doing.
That's sick. That's what some of my young people used to do as well. And then it was only when I started reading books about like mental health and the way that we disassociate ourselves from that character or that part of our lives, that I thought, wow, it's amazing how we create these new realities. After you disclosed, where did it go from there?
So I disclosed to my cousin and a friend, and then that was it kind of thing. Discussed it a little bit with them, and it was summer, so we all went home, and I didn't mention it to my mum, didn't say anything to my mum. And then the next morning, the door knock, I opened it and my aunt was stood there, and I knew my cousin had told her. So I just like threw on a hoodie and said to my mum, right, I'm going out. Your sister's here, I'm going out. And I went up to the adventure playground and my cousin was there, and I just attacked her, to be fair. And she knew why I was angry. She knew that she told her mum, and I'd obviously said to her not to. My mum phoned the adventure playground because she knew I'd be there, and there was a youth worker working there at the time, and she basically looked me and my cousin in the room and said, like, you not need to tell me what's going on. My second disclosure was to her. She did all her safeguarding reports and stuff with my mum. They were able to do all that stuff. I feel like they done that stuff without me knowing about it though. Like, I don't remember ever being asked, like, is this what you want? Within a week, I had a social worker, I had police in my life, I had a safeguarding officer at school, I had all these professionals that I'd never had in my life before telling me, like, how I should be behaving, what I have to do, that I need to do police interviews, that I need to go to counselling, that I need to talk to these people and tell people what I've been through. But I didn't want any of that.
What did you feel like you wanted at the time, just for everything to go away?
Yeah, and I've said this before, and I know obviously people are going to listen to the podcast, and I don't want anyone to take this on, but this is true to me. Like, I wish now, as an adult, that I hadn't disclosed my abuse. Wow. Because of the effect that it had on my life.
And is it that it's like people took that from you?
Yeah, like, it's only now that there's platforms like this, and that as women we are able to come and have conversations, that I'm able to tell it how I want to tell it. And what they call professionals, like, you're no Aliyah. We work with young people, so all of a sudden we become a professional. That title in itself is frightening to a young person, because none of these people were professionals on me. They didn't know me, but all of a sudden they're making me tell this story over and over again. They're making me relive this trauma over and over again, not telling me what they're going to do with my information. And all of a sudden I just become this story on a bit of paper. Like, it dehumanizes you. And all these people knew my story, and there was teachers at school that were moving funny with me because all of a sudden they've got all this sympathy for me. Like, and I became very, very angry. I hated the system. I didn't want to talk to professionals. I didn't want to access services. I didn't want to continue to tell my story. It went to the police, and I don't even remember giving permission. Like, without anyone even asking me, to my knowledge, I was told, like, we're going to arrest him, you're going to have to give evidence. I'm from South London. I remember my mum saying to me one day, okay, our liaison officer wants us to go to Maidstone so that you can do your video interviews. No one explained to me what a video interview was or why I was there. In the end, I did 25 hours of video interviews.
Was that how old was you? Was that when you was 12?
I think before my 30th birthday. This has all happened. But
so they was attempting to get you to resurface and bring up all these traumas that you had lived from the age of 3 and forgotten from the age of about 7. So they were trying to bring it all back up.
So they wanted me to have counselling, but I wasn't allowed to start counselling until I'd done my police interviews, because of the trauma that counselling brings up. So you have to do your interviews from memory, basically. So you can't start, like, your healing process until you've done what the police want. I had to go for, like, medical examinations and stuff. And I remember going for my medical examination, and my mum, she was in the room, but obviously I was behind a curtain and stuff, having my examination, which is like for like a 12-year-old who, I was a virgin at the time, hadn't slept with anybody, and there's like swabs and there's this and there's that and there's like cuts of pubic hair and they're looking inside with cameras and stuff. And I remember him opening the curtain whilst I was still laid on the bed with my legs in stirrup and saying to my mum, I'm gonna be honest, she's 12, there is evidence that she's had sexual intercourse, but because of her age we can't say whether or not she's sexually active now or whether that was historical, so this probably isn't going to be used in evidence. It wasn't worthwhile you come in. And like, it was so like point blank.
How did that make you feel?
It was horrible. It was difficult. It was really difficult. But again, like, it wasn't, even parts of that, like, I don't have a memory for, but I don't know what my emotions were, because it wasn't about my emotions. It wasn't about how I felt.
Then what did the police do about it? What even happened with that case?
They phoned my mum up one evening, and it wasn't long after the medical examination, actually, and said to my mum, keep her off school tomorrow, because to get to my school, I had to walk, like, past my dad's house. And that they said, like, keep her off school tomorrow because we're going to do an arrest warrant and we're going to do it at 8:30 in the morning. So that will be when she's on her way to school. The next morning they phoned, they said, yeah, the arrest went well. We've got him. Bear in mind, my dad at the time, he worked for a cab service, but he dropped off disabled children to school. So he was working with, like, vulnerable individuals. Yeah, so they arrested him. They said, we'll phone you when he's being released. I probably left for school. I think I went in at lunchtime that day. And on my way to school at lunchtime, my dad was stood at his front door. They hadn't phoned us to say he'd been released. My lunchtime then was 12:55. He was arrested at 8:30 in the morning. He was released by 12:55, or before that, because he'd managed to get home.
So how did they deal with the whole case? What was the outcome?
There wasn't enough evidence, so they couldn't proceed. They didn't even phone us, didn't say anything. They sent us a letter, actually. But I'd probably turned 13 at this point. So it was probably within like 18 months of me disclosing, because he was put on bail, and his bail conditions were, my cousin who I disclosed to, she was like, she was going to be like a main witness because she was my first disclosure. So she had to have video interviews and stuff as well because she was a minor. The youth worker that I disclosed to, she was also going to be a witness. So his bail conditions were like not to speak to either of them, not to approach me, not to come to our address. He had to like walk a certain way off the estate so we could walk the other way, kind of thing. He breached them constantly. He'd like send letters for our door saying he was going to petrol bomb my house, and he'd see me on the estate and he'd call my cousin over. And I think at that point she was quite scared of him, so she'd go over and he'd speak to her and he'd say things like, she's not going to call me dad, tell her to walk on the other side of the road, don't want to see her face. If I ever catch her on her own, this is what I'm going to do to her. Let her know I'm going to kill her mum. Like, just, and this was that constant. Every day on my way to school, there was no other route to get to school. My mum started dropping me to school, but I didn't even want that because people asked too many questions. Because you live 3 minutes away, why is your mum dropping you to school? But like, if he saw my mum going through it past, like, he'd egg my mum's car on the way to school. Wow. He'd put bricks through our windows, but with notes letting us know it was him. I think the police came around twice and took statements, took it as evidence, and then said, oh, like, we can't get fingerprints of bricks. Like, it felt like at the time that we was the criminals, kind of thing, that they thought we were making this up, because surely he wouldn't do this. He's on bail. Why would he throw a brick through your window? Why would he put a note through your window or your door saying that he's going to petrol bomb your house? Like, no one's stupid enough to do that. My dad is stupid enough to do that, believe me.
And they didn't like make any sort of attempts to move you lot's house, to safeguard you after the situation?
No.
How long after all of that did you start your healing process?
A long time. I think for a long time I was really angry. I just got involved in badness, like as a cope. Smoked a lot of weed, committed a lot of crime, got involved with the wrong people. But I don't think until I was maybe about 16, I started really recognising that I had a problem. And this was my problem. When
you say this was your problem, what do you mean?
Like, the fact that I'd been abused was my problem. I was just angry.
What did it take for you to get to that point at 16?
I've been an individual that's always wanted more for my life. Like, I've always wanted to be successful. I've always wanted to work with young people. I've always wanted to like make something of myself. And I think 16 was my turning point, because I knew, like, well, you're classed as an adult now in some aspects. If you continue to make decisions that you're making, you're going to shut doors for you. And you want all these things with your life. You want to work with young people. You want to do these things. Your actions are going to stop you from doing them. One of my youth workers at the time, actually, who I now call dad, he's like my adopted dad, but I feel like I adopted him more than he adopted me. He was like a really, really positive role model in my life and had like a massive soft spot for me. And I was really, really close with him, and I still am. And if I didn't have him, then I don't know if I would have made the change. But because I had a positive male role model and somebody that genuinely cared, my relationship with my mum like completely broke down. So I was lucky to have him. Because I had him, I was able to make that change. Also, my dad died when I was 15.
Okay.
So that was probably part of it as well. That allowed me to go through a process
of grieving now. Like, you've now recognised, maybe you can put the anger to rest and grieve.
I grieved him, but it's a weird one, and it's something that I want to talk on for a lot of people at some point. It's not discussed, like how you, once your abuser passes away, the effect that it has on you and how you deal with that. Because I feel when I first found out that he'd passed, so it was my biggest brother, who I found when I was 13, who told us that my dad had passed. So we didn't have a relationship with my big brother because my dad had abused him when he was young. So his mum had stopped contact, and then I found him on Facebook when I was like 13, and we started a relationship. And so he told us my dad had passed. At first, even with that, I was so angry, because I was like, how have you been allowed like such an easy way out? So firstly, like, it felt like no one's believed me that I've even been abused. Like, there was family members, even my aunt, who knocked on my door to tell my mum that day, regularly told me that she didn't believe I'd been abused, and she didn't know why I was saying these things about my dad. There was a lot of people that didn't believe it.
Did your mum believe it?
Yeah, absolutely. Never doubted me. I've never felt like my mum doubted me ever. And she was already aware of my brother's abuse, so my mum couldn't disbelieve me. And my brother believed me as well. And my brother started putting things together and seeing like patterns, and said things like, I always used to be jealous when you went into the bathroom with dad because he gave you more attention than he gave me. And then beat himself up massively because he was like, them times that I was jealous, you was being abused and I should have protected you. So yeah, my immediate family, my brother, my mum believed me. Even when I told my older brother, I feel like, as much as he wasn't a part of my life until that point, and he'd just got his dad back. So my older brother had actually been physically abused by his mum and his stepdad. And obviously we're mixed race. His mum and his stepdad were white. He had always seeked like his black side. So went out and found my dad. And loved that relationship because he was learning about his heritage, he was learning about his dad, like he'd built this strong bond with my dad. But when he met me, I think being a sister and being a younger sister, he immediately became really protective. So when I told him what had happened, he actually attempted to kill my dad. But yeah, so like he believed me and he didn't really know me. Yeah, like I don't know, I just felt like when he passed, I just felt like all these people haven't believed me and now you've died. And now you don't even have to live with what you've done. Like, you should have lived to an old age and had to rot with what was going on in your head because this is what you've put your kids through. My older brother was abused by my dad. My middle brother was abused by my dad and then me. And I say this to my brothers a lot, like, I don't see my abuse as any worse than their abuse. Like, you can't measure abuse. What might be small for me might be massive for someone else. I might tell my story and people are like, oh my God, that's crazy. Like, how do you cope? And someone might tell me their story and might think it's minuscule in comparison, but they're not comparable. I don't think people like acknowledge that enough. Whatever abuse you go through, if you've been through something, we all deal with things differently. Like, they're just not, it's not comparable. My dad was abused as a child. My dad's mum was a prostitute. He was conceived when his mum was like 15. So he was brought up believing that his nan was his mum and his mum was his sister until he was like 15. But at 12, his mum sent a prostitute into his bedroom for him to lose his virginity to. And he was abused through most of his child life.
I've learned, like, as I get older, our parents were drinking dirty water. They didn't have clean water to give us. We have to learn to be at peace with our own experiences. And then the other half is like learning to be at peace with our pathology, the stuff that have been like deep rooted within our family for a very long time. And it was only inevitable that this behavior was going to trickle down onto us.
And I get that to some extent, but I feel like that's such a cop-out. Like, I feel like they say, and it's like a known thing that people say, it's like, oh, 80% of abusers go on to abuse. I think that saying in itself was made by an abuser. Because I know for myself, I don't have children, but I know when I do have children, my first instinct is going to be to protect them.
Like you said, if we take it back to what you said before in terms of you can't compare how people are going to react to their trauma, right? So if we believe that we can't compare how people react to trauma, what you're able to just function through and get through and what you're able to survive through, the next man or the next girl might crumble from. Internally, emotionally, they're dead. Mentally, emotionally, there is no conscious, there's no empathy, there's no compassion.
You're right. I can hear what you're saying, but I don't think I'll ever see it from that perspective, because I feel like if you've been through this, and I know people deal with these differently, like, why would you go on to abuse your own?
I think who in their right mind would? They're not in their right mind.
Yeah, exactly. And it started somewhere, but we have to break the cycle.
Exactly.
Yes.
Like, it only takes one to break the cycle.
That's all it takes, is the one black sheep, and every family is blessed enough to have that one black sheep.
Yeah.
How do you feel like going forward as an adult or growing up, how do you feel like your childhood traumas maybe affected the relationships you then had with men?
My relationships have been affected massively. Right, so when I disclosed at 12, after that I got with a boyfriend who at the time was 17. I was selling drugs for him. He went to jail. When I was 13, I was still with him. I ran his drug line for him, did all of that. I was sending him money every week. He went to jail for like 3 years. I stayed with him. When he came out of jail, he became really abusive. But I used to smoke a lot of weed. I didn't start smoking weed till I met him. And he would give me a lot of weed I smoked. And I realised that he liked me being high. Like, he enjoyed the person that I was when I was high, and groomed me in that way to do the things that he needed to do. He was part of like quite a well-known gang in South East London, and so I would hold these drugs, I'd hold these weapons, he could go and commit crime, I'd wash his clothes, I'd do all these things, and he had me like that.
Did he know that you was abused?
He was one of the people that was there when I first disclosed. Yeah.
Okay.
So yes, as much as I walked around and thought I was this strong individual and I was bad and I was on road and I was doing all these things, like, I was being manipulated, I was being groomed. Like, I can admit that now, and it's taken me a long time to be able to admit that. I've been in like probably like two or three quite abusive relationships, but that is because when I first started speaking to that person or got with that person, they're nurturing. When you reflect, they're possessive, but you like the possessiveness. You like someone asking you where you are and what you're doing, and it comes across as this caring, this person cares about me.
Of course.
Whereas as it progresses, this is not caring. Controlling me is not caring. Telling me what I can wear and where I can go and who I can speak to, searching my phone. This is not normal behaviour.
Do you think you was confused about how somebody appeared to be caring about you by controlling you, and what actually was people caring about you because the fact that your father was the total opposite?
To some extent, but I think it was more like I wanted a man that could protect me. And in finding these men that could protect me, they then became my abusers. And I was looking for, I never want to get hurt again. So if I've got a powerful man around me and he's strong, no one's ever going to touch me. I'm invincible. He'll deal with it. If we go out into the world as women, like with our jug of dad half empty, if our dad was abusive, if our dad was neglectful, we go out there to find a man to either protect us from that, or we find a man that we recognise them traits in, but when we get with them, we don't recognise they're the traits that our dad had. And as women and as young women, we do it, and I see it a lot with the young women that I work with, and I am able to recognise it now in myself and in other people's relationships, but it's still difficult to break that cycle.
How did you break that cycle?
I don't know if I have broken that cycle. I don't want to sit here and say, yeah, like my healing process is over and I've definitely come out of that. My most recent relationship was abusive. Like, I don't think that I've been in a non-abusive relationship with a male in my life yet. God willing, that will happen. But lucky enough, in my most recent relationship, I was able to recognise the red flags a lot sooner. He was very mentally abusive, and I've been in physically abusive relationships, but I think I was able to cut that off before it became physically abusive. So I guess it's going to be a journey like that. It's going to be, it gets a little bit better, and I start to recognise behaviours a lot sooner, hopefully, when I feel like I already have, but there's still room for development.
What about the self-development? What about the relationships that you're attracted to? You know, what are you doing in terms of your own personal development and working on yourself so you are not attracted to the things that we are wired as daddyless daughters to be attracted to?
My way of developing myself and learning these things is definitely in the work that I do.
And that's also a trauma response. Like, there's other daddyless daughters who get obsessive over work, and it's another distraction that we do. And I know I've done that. That was my process of getting obsessed with work and trying to distract myself that way. Probably happened around when I was your age, from like 22, 23 to 25. I would even say last year, 26, was when I was able to really see it for what it was. Now I'm able to make the changes to be like, okay, cool, I can have a healthy balance within my workload and stuff and the relationships I form. But we get obsessed with work because now we don't have to focus on the relationship that we're building within ourselves and the relationships that we're forming outside of work.
Yeah, no, completely. And I understand that. And I think that's true. Like, I do distract myself with work, but I think I've learned where I've gone wrong through working with other young people and other young women and hearing their stories. And this is why it's so good to speak, because you don't always recognise that it's a problem until you hear someone else recognise that it's a problem or repeat it back to you and you see it in yourself, if that makes sense. Obviously, aside from that, like, I've gone through counselling. I will go back to counselling at some point. The last counselling that I went to recommended a counselling called rapid eye therapy. Yeah. And it's almost like, it's like a hypnosis that takes you back to a certain event. And for me, that was really traumatic. Like, what's that Christmas film where he's with like the ghost of Christmas past and he's like watching himself do whatever he's doing, and it's almost like that. So you're seeing yourself, but you're watching it from a bird's eye view and you can't save yourself. And for me, I know people that have been through it, it's been really effective. For me, it was too traumatic, and maybe I just wasn't at a stage in my healing process where I was ready for that. I've had counselling, but it's not my way. For my development and I do a lot of like journaling, and I've got crystals around my house and I find them really therapeutic. Sitting in my own company, like, I believe massively like in the universe and in manifestations of thoughts becoming things, and like that's helped me to heal massively. It's helped me to heal, I think, in some ways. I'm not fully healed, I'm not fully there. My whole life will be a healing process, but they're my coping strategies. That's what I do.
Definitely is. And I always say that, like, there is no destination, like, we're not going anywhere. This is a journey, and we have to just unpick the layers, because every time you do take off a layer of trauma, you meet a new version of yourself that you weren't prepared for, and you got to get to work again. So
and I feel like for a lot of us women, like, I feel like having children will be a trigger for us. These are life stages that we're probably going to go through, and we're go through it. And like, these are the triggers that I see before me. Like, I've got this very strong idea of like what I want to be as a mum, but I know that I need to heal before I get there, because I'm going to be a super overprotective mum. If I got pregnant today, my child wouldn't be able to move from my side, because my mum thought she knew my dad. And this is all like, I need to heal before I even get to that stage.
I feel you 100% on that. That's all the same stuff. That's the stuff I used to think about. And then I just came to the conclusion, like, you know what, just forget. It's not by force. It's just time for me to make the rest of my life the best of my life. I owe that to myself, you know what I'm saying? That's my way of not exposing myself. But I got some difficult questions here for you though. Right. Do you trust yourself?
Yeah, I'd say that I do.
Do you love yourself?
Definitely.
Do you respect yourself?
Yes, I'd like to say I do.
Nah.
But I feel like my patterns of behaviour show that I don't.
Elaborate.
So I'd like to say that I do. Like, I do respect myself. But I feel like if I had the utmost respect for myself, I wouldn't allow myself to get into the situations, especially with men, that I get into.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't let them disrespect me. As much as I'm recognising it now, I still, like, even with my most recent relationship, it wasn't like, right, he disrespected me one in a way and I walked away. No, you disrespected me multiple times and I stayed. So if I respected myself, I wouldn't be in that. We wouldn't be at this point. So I'd like to say, as a single woman, I respect myself, because ain't no one disrespecting me right now. But my patterns of behaviour don't prove that point how I'd like them to. So let's see. In a year's time, ask me that question and let's see where we're at.
We'll keep you to that.
I'm definitely going to keep you to that, because I'm looking to stick around in your life. But at the same time, I just want you to understand that it takes us back to the point that I made earlier, you know, about the dirty water. You have to, like, be patient with yourself, do you understand? Because we were taught not to honour our feelings. Yeah. So when a man disrespects us and then we feel a certain way, we weren't taught to, like, press down on those feelings and stand against how we feel. Nah, we was told, you're a liar, you're bad, you don't even know what you're talking about, sit down, when serious things were happening to us as kids. Do you get what I'm saying? So it's going to take a while for you to honour your feelings. It's going to take a while for you to kind of 100% trust how you feel.
And I think when you say that as well, like, the people that believed me the least were other women, which I think for me was like super painful. And I feel like it's painful in my adulthood as well, like my adult life as well, and especially in the profession that I'm in, because I now see how many women go through similar situations. So for women to not believe you, I found really difficult.
It's very questionable, because it's like, it's crazy. And this is going to sound so crazy. How comes it is men that usually believe and it's women that don't? I just don't get it.
Men that I've told my story to, they are the ones that say to me, like, do you know how many women have told me, like, similar stories?
And I was going to say, is it because men know that, and I don't want to say this to say all men, because not all men are like that, but I'm saying they might know that they're capable of that or have those tendencies.
100%. That's exactly what was in my head, because men know.
Is that what you think?
So is it because they know a male's tendencies, not necessarily their own, but males that's maybe could have surrounded them, or that, do you get what I mean?
Yeah, I think males see it in each other a lot.
And they don't hold, like, accountable. A lot of men have let their friends and the stuff that their friends have done slide, even if they know that's the wrong, and that what you just did was a bit bad. Trust me, I was around a lot of guys growing up that was doing a lot of weird things, and their friends knew about it, but because they live by this bro code and they really entwined with their egos and their pride and stuff like that, they don't want a man to look on them and say, oh, you're a bitch or whatever. Like, a man will know another man has raped somebody and never talk about it. Do you get what I'm saying? Yeah. But then I also think on the other side, the flip side of the conversation is men have relationships with women. So men, they know they can lie down with a woman, I believe, and they know when something has happened to that woman. Like, I feel like you can sense it. And I also have seen the same thing, like, in abusers. Like, they know, they trauma bond. They know, like, how to pick the right vulnerable woman. They can tell by the way she behaves in her attitude when she's been through certain stuff. And then they know how to, you know, manipulate the situation, get themselves in the door. Like we said, then the mask comes off and then it's like, welcome to the party.
Absolutely. But I think with women as well, do you know what? I don't think, it's that women don't believe each other. I think women don't want to recognise their own abuse. So by accepting that you've been abused, they have to accept that they've been abused. Because a lot of us have got such similar stories. Okay, the certain stories within our story might deviate and might be different, but a lot of our stories are the same. A lot of our stories are, we've been abused by a family member. It doesn't always have to be your dad. It could be an uncle, it could be a family friend. Like, a lot of us can relate to that story, but not a lot of us talk on it. So you girls, when we did the film before, you met my friend. She obviously came, she watched us film, whatever. She phoned me that night and she disclosed something to me, and she'd never spoken about it before. But through watching me talk with you guys, she felt like she was able to do that.
The more that we grow as a society and the more we have conversations like this, the more platforms that open up like this that are willing to talk about their dirty laundry, willing to air everything. So the girls coming up underneath us can actually learn some real shit instead of adopting all this behavior like twerking on live and creating OnlyFans pages and all of that to mock the rooted issues as to what they're actually feeling about themselves. So we'll be leading on to our first question for you, Livi. What would be your advice to a young girl who may be dealing with your experiences right now, or what would you say to your younger self?
For people that know me, they will know my favourite quote in the world is "Don't let your crown slip." So number one, don't let your crown slip. Like, remember that you're a queen no matter what you're going through. But so I've got a particular song that I listen to on repeat, yeah? I'm just going to read you, because this is what I would say if I had have written this song, yeah? It's an India IRA song called Worthy. So it says, "Now listen up to this truth. You are me and I am you. Every one of us is worthy. Baby girl, worthy woman. Every one of us is worthy. I know your life. I felt your pain. I know your joys and your shame. Sometimes it feels like life walks over you, like you're a penny on the ground. But either on the ground or in your purse, the smallest piece still holds its worth. Every one of us is worthy."
That's so beautiful, man. Thank you for joining us today. All right, guys. Well, tune in next week for our next episode.